Zonta International once again presents the Remarkable Women Powerful Stories webinar series, and I welcome you to my conversation with Emma Lehbib, who is joining me from Nairobi in Kenya. Welcome to you, Emma.
Thank you.
I'm Lynn Foley, and I'm truly privileged to speak with the remarkable women who are so generous with their stories and with their time. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and also pay that respect to any First Nations people present. Zonta International is a leading global organisation working together to build a better world for women and girls. So Emma, welcome again. And as we begin, I'm just going to give our audience a short introduction to you and some of your achievements. Emma has grown up in Germany and has initiated several campaigns while at school that affected the world outside her school, including raising money to support refugees in Libya, the International Organization for Migration, and an orphanage in South Africa. She has learned important skills as a leader in political simulations, such as the Model European Parliament and the Elephant Model United Nations, and organising conferences and guiding the General Secretariat of the ELMUN. Currently, she's studying European law at the University of Groningen and is doing an exchange semester in Nairobi. She works for an NGO and is part of the Sahrawi Diaspora in Germany. And together with her colleagues, she organises demonstrations, moderates events and plans campaigns to liberate Western Sahara from the Moroccan occupying power. In the future, she wants to pursue a career in academia and politics. So, Emma, I'd love to start our conversation with, where did your story really begin?
Okay, so I was born and raised in Germany, went there to school, have always enjoyed going, being in a classroom. And as a child of migrants, I knew how education is the key to a good life and many possibilities, especially in Germany. And but I also grew up with the activism and the stories of my parents, because they're both from Western Sahara. My father experienced the war as a soldier. My mother had to flee as a young child and live in the refugee camps, and later on was sent to Cuba to educate herself. So I grew up with these stories, and I guess they make me who I am.
Okay, so I'm wondering, in your family, do you have brothers and sisters, and whereabouts are you in your family?
Yeah, brothers and sisters. So I have an older brother and several younger siblings. I'm the oldest sister, and I grew up in a household where I was the eldest. So yeah, was a bit of the typical bigger sister helping out, telling my siblings what to do and what not to do.
Yes, so you were heavily involved in I guess working with your parents, with the younger children in your family, and had a lot of more responsibility because you were the elder sister.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was it about? And I know you're still a very young woman, but what was it about school and your background and all of the knowledge you have about your parents' background and struggles in getting to Germany that has influenced your choice of study and what you think you might want to do once you finish studying?
I feel like the studies reflect the experience, well, firstly, the interest I had during school, the political simulations, and they also reflect what has affected my family. So studying international law, which is like the basis for the self-determination right of the Sahrawi people, is my way of honoring the stories of my parents and what is also my own story.
So you've told me before when we met that you're studying law, but you don't expect that you will maybe enter the profession of law. So how will your study of international law and law support you, perhaps in whether you go into politics or whether you stay in academia?
Exactly. I'm studying international law and also European Union law to just understand like what the framework is in which states operates and individuals. And we're hoping to expand my knowledge and also contribute in academia and thus also in politics through the knowledge I gained throughout the years. I hope I can show new pathways and also be a representation as a female, as a child of migrants, as a child also of refugees, because it's also a refugee story, and of people who are displaced.
I know you spoke to me about the refugee camps in Western Sahara, and you've mentioned those already today, and the effect on your own family members. I recall that maybe your grandmother is still in a refugee camp in Western Sahara. Is that true?
Exactly. My grandmother, my aunts, some uncles, and most of my cousins. So one side of my family lives completely in the camps. Yeah.
So can you talk to us more about this? Because I know you're very passionate and you're already a strong advocate, and you're working within the Sahrawi Diaspora in Germany to make a difference for Western Sahara. Can you talk to us a little more about the situation in Western Sahara and how you hope that your leadership and your work as a young woman is intended to make a difference?
Yeah, so Western Sahara, the indigenous people are called the Sahrawis, and they have been living there for a long time. And at some point, just like most of Africa, Western Sahara was also colonized, and here was by the Spanish. And there were already liberation movements. The Sahrawi people tried to become independent. But then in 1975, we were invaded by Morocco from the north, and that caused the outbreak of a war between our liberation movement, the Polisario Front, against the invaders. And that war carried on until 1991, when then there was a ceasefire mediated by the United Nations. And that ceasefire had one of the terms was that there will be a referendum in which the Sahrawi people can decide upon their destiny, upon their land. And now 30 years later, this referendum has never been carried out because it's constantly being blocked by Morocco and other interests. And so up to this day, it's either you live under occupation and strong repression in Western Sahara under Moroccan occupation, or you live in the refugee camps where, for example, my grandmother is. And then there are people like me who are in the diaspora. And I remember since I was little, we would always go to refugee camps. And for me, it was like paradise. I really enjoyed it, to see my grandmother, to see my cousins. You had the endless desert, and you would get creative in the ways how you could play. And I remember always my aunt asking me, oh, do you prefer being here or do you prefer being in Germany? And it was an easy answer. I was like, no, I want to stay here. But as I grew older and mature, I understood that the situation there is very unfair, and that the living conditions are super harsh, and it shouldn't be the case that my family members and other Sahrawi people have to live there, even though they have this beautiful country in which they can provide for themselves. They are not in need of humanitarian aid. And so for me, what I'm hoping to do as a person in the diaspora and having many more opportunities and privileges is to create a discourse and create attention for the cause. Because whenever someone asks, oh, where are you from? And I say Western Sahara, people just can't locate it or don't know what it is and what it is about. And it's a highly political issue, but it should be known. So for me, it's creating awareness. So whoever goes into politics or becomes a leader can always consider Western Sahara when it's needed.
Yes, because so many other countries in Africa where there have been troubles or not seem to be more well known and spoken about, but Western Sahara certainly isn't well known or spoken about, and many of us are unaware of Western Sahara, let alone the harshness and the refugee situation there and the war. So, and the conflict that continues as a result of that war. So you've done a lot of community work so far in your life. You're a very successful young leader, particularly through what you've done at school and in the Elephant Model United Nations in Bremen. And you work with the Golden Z Club in Bremen. So what drew you to join the Zonta community work? And I guess to leading in the Elman, you know, what is it about both of those, particularly the Zonta community, that brought you there?
Yeah, so I start chronologically. So I joined Elmun as it's a political simulation. So I first joined as a delegate, and I really enjoyed it to have a voice about political issues, global affairs, and I think it offered me so much in the way that I don't mind speaking in front of other people. I'm able to defend my position and be confident about it, that I wanted to offer the same experience to other young people. So I became part of the organizational team over the years, also with friends together. And we wanted to make sure that what we had is also provided for the next generations following. And in regards to Zonta, well, gender equity is still needs to be fought for, and Zonta contributes to it. And I also see the liberation of my people, or any people in the world, as the liberation of the women, because the Sahrawi women are actually the most at the forefront of all the time, and for me always have been the most resilient and strong people I know. When I saw my mother, when I see my grandmother struggling in the refugee camps, when I see family friends fighting for their rights on demonstrations. So being part of the Zonta community, I also want to uplift the voices of Sahrawi women who also struggle against the patriarchal society and also against occupation.
And that's a very important commitment, isn't it? And it's clear your dedication and passion to do good work through being a member of a Zonta club. I suspect that given you're having this semester in Nairobi, you would be joining your Zonta club virtually, no doubt, over Zoom or Teams or something. Is your Golden Z Club still functioning well, even though many of you will be coming in online?
Yes, for us, we were all based in our hometown, but then left to study on. So it had always been on Zoom, which can be a struggle, but also Zoom has enabled us to still continue. And as we're still a very young club, we're still trying to navigate how we're going to prioritize, because there's so much we can do on gender equity, but also the times and capabilities, of course, have to make us have priorities. So it's about defining what us as a Golden Sub Club in Bremen we want to do.
And of course, with you being in Africa and Germany, the time difference isn't so terrible. So it probably allows you to join, whereas I know today we're 7 or 8 hours away from each other, aren't we, with me in Australia and you're in Kenya.
Exactly.
So if we can move on then and talk about your powerful voice, because you do have a powerful voice and you're using it wisely, I think, to support change. In my work in Zonta, in the district and internationally, it's a major challenge, I think, for us to truly hear the voices of young women and to understand your perspective on local and global issues, including how a Zonta club can be relevant. So in a Golden Z club or a Golden Z club, if you're from North America, you are in generally a close age group because you've all come from the university background. But in a broader Zonta club, the ages are quite diverse. I'm wondering what your views are of, in a mainstream Zonta club, what is it that would make a club more relatable for young women to join and continue to join, given that there's often women in my age group and women in their 40s and then a few younger women like yourself?
So I think a lot of young women or young people in general want to be part of big organizations, want to contribute to change, but they always don't know where to start. I remember also when I started to be engaged, I didn't know how I can contribute my own part. So I feel like if Zonta is able to reach out to places where young women are at, so in schools, in universities, in other facilities, and just get to talk to them, I think a lot of them will join and can give you new prompts as well. But I think they will also relate to maybe the topics you're already working on. And so it's more about the exposure to Zonta that will, I think, create a lot of attention and relatability for young women wanting to join.
Because I'm pretty strong on the fact that it's not necessarily about women who are further down their careers, who are older, mentoring women of your age group. I think it's about cross-mentoring. I think I can learn as much from you as you might learn from me. So it's that the power that we have to listen to each other and understand the perspective. I can't be 20 these days. I'm not. And when I was 20, it was a long time ago. But understanding your perspective, and that there's a lot of views that we share, but you will have different perspectives on the way of going about it and how you want to work towards that. So if we stay on the topic of gender equality, what do you believe needs to happen over the next 5 or 10 years to go closer towards reaching the goal, the true goal? Because, you know, the all of the reports that come out, the global gender gap reports, etc., say we're still more than 100 years away of reaching gender equality internationally.
Yes. I think we first need to start with ourselves, in the sense of, because we always socialize in a patriarchal society, we have been facing or like growing up and even adapting sometimes those positions that are harmful to women, is that we work on these and are constantly critical of what we're thinking and what we're saying. And that, so it's a lot about educating ourselves and then extending that education also to other people and reaching out. And it extends to a collective effort, because we need to organize together as women and also men who are allies, and identify what are the steps and what are the issues we have and how we can approach these. So I think also a big or a very vital point is that we need to understand that it's a gender issue, but it's also connected to many more. It's an intersectional issue. So it's about disabilities, it's about ethnicity, it's about socioeconomic situations that really impact often women more heavily in society, and that we take this into account, and that we also work internationally, so across borders, and we listen to each other and try to understand where the priorities of our counterparts are at.
And that's one of the intents of this series too, is to be talking to people like yourself who are of a Western Saharan background. You grew up in Germany, you're studying back in Africa, in Kenya, and that we all have different views from where we've grown up and where we come from, and that diversity and inclusion in a club is so important. Do you describe yourself as a feminist?
Yes, I'd say so. But the label is not enough for me to be a feminist. I have to always work on myself and also contribute to the feminist cause. But yes, I am a feminist because I believe that women should have the same societal and political positions as men do.
And it's, I guess, I don't know whether you agree, but I have a strong feeling that it's men and women working together to bring about gender equality, and then it's men and women working with the diverse cultures, with the ethnicity, with disability, etc., to bring about that inclusion and the equity in those spaces as well. And wherever we look, we've got a long way to go. I always thought when I was your age, by the time I got to my age, we would be a lot closer than we are today, Emma. It's a sadness, I think, to many of us in my age group, that we're not closer to making a real difference in this space. But maybe in your lifetime, we'll get a lot closer and we'll have those powerful voices like yours. So what are the causes or topics that are close to your heart? What other things are you really passionate about?
What I'm
Are there
passionate
any
about,
other
I think,
things that are right?
sorry. Yes, I'd say just social issues in general. I mean, I grew up in one of the richest and wealthiest countries, Germany, but I still see how, firstly, that the richness and wealthiness is often based on exploiting other countries, other situations and people, but also that there's so many people struggling in Germany to keep themselves going, keep alive, and being able to provide for their families or themselves. And that even though technically everyone has a chance to become a politician, become a doctor, etc., also more easier than it is in other countries, a bit like the American dream, let's say the German dream. But not everyone will be able to become a millionaire or become the most successful person, because we have a system that doesn't allow that to happen. So we have to really work on how everyone, and that doesn't require this hard work and require this hard work to live a decent and dignified life. And yeah, so I think that's a big, well, something that is very close to my heart, to have more awareness for social issues.
And building that through the work that you do and through university, etc. And I guess once you finish university, you'll have even more opportunity to do that either through further study or whatever you take on in your career. So in the sense of leadership, who have been the people who've influenced you the most?
Mostly, I think my mother, simply because, yeah, I grew up with her. And at some point when my parents divorced, she was a single mother with 4 children and having to study again because her studies from Cuba weren't recognized in Germany. Because, yeah, it's always a bit more difficult if you're you've studied outside the European Union. So she had to study again and became a teacher now, just a couple of years ago, and has been inspiring other students who have a migrant background, who have a refugee background. And she started late. I mean, I think her mid-30s with 4 children. People usually don't turn around their life like that, especially if you don't have another counterpart who can support you through the process. So having been able to see my mother do this, I know that I'm able to do anything, and that that it's about the trust in yourself and the confidence in yourself. And so her, and also my grandmother who lives in refugee camps, she is the head of the family there. Always when I'm at my family's, it's just women actually, and just a few men, but it's the women who lead the family, who take care of everything, and are the providers, are the nurturers. And they do it without any, like with such a selflessness, and without trying to be better than anyone, but just being a natural leader in the sense of wanting to provide for your family. So these 2 people have really influenced me.
Sometimes we underestimate the power of leadership within family, don't we? We sort of think leadership's about what you do in political parties or what you do in your job, but some of the most important leaderships within families, isn't it? And I think you've just spoken with me about that leadership you saw from your mother and from your grandmother still are very powerful for you. Outside of family and through school and in university, have you had a mentor or mentors, people that have also supported you along the way?
I wouldn't say official mentors in the classical sense, but throughout different projects, there would always be some adult who had more experience, who had different views, who would advise me and guide me. For example, with the Sahrawi Diaspora, Najat Hamdi, she is the Polisario representative in Germany, who is representing the Sahrawi people in Germany and their cause. And also teachers who I had who were organizing the political simulations with. And when I was a kid, there were people who would contribute as well. So I think throughout the life, I had mentors who might have not known that they were my mentors, but they were for sure.
Yes, sometimes we don't know we've mentored someone until 20 years later when they tell us that we've mentored them, and we don't realize it's just part of what we do, isn't it? Absolutely. Have you had a chance yet to be mentoring other young women around you, do you think?
I've heard sometimes, especially back in school, because let's take, for example, Moon. It's when I was a Secretary General, there were people who were just delegates and chairs and would take on that position the years after and say, I'd help them be motivated or even see themselves in that position. So I think maybe unconsciously I did, but I hope to do it in the future when I have gained more experience.
But you will be doing it along the way with younger women and girls who you come across, and they look up to you as a role model, most likely already, particularly in your community. So what do you think your leadership gifts are, your leadership powers or gifts so far?
I think firstly, empathy. I'm a very empathetic person. I think it is with growing up as like one of the oldest siblings that you always consider the feelings of someone else. And secondly, being very ambitious. So if I have a goal, I want to pursue it, if it's in school, if it's outside of school. And thirdly, my background, just that I think I'm able to understand that issues are more complex than just black and white, but that it's more nuanced, and that we have to identify also the problems we have in ourselves, but also in like outside. So
okay, so what characteristics do you think remarkable leaders have in common? So when you look around you at the people you see leading anywhere, what do you think are the most important characteristics of those leaders?
I think the most important is that they're able to be they're like very sociable in the sense of they understand how to be with other people, how to give them good feeling and be on an eye-to-eye level. Because if you're a leader, there's someone who's following you, who are you leading, and therefore there must be a good relationship with people. So I think they're good with people, and also always try to have a broader view in the sense, be like more understanding that there are always different views, of course, if you have one group of people, and like how to find compromises together, or not just simply say how it's supposed to go.
So be more, I guess, collaborative rather than directing, perhaps. Yeah. So one of the things that life causes, I think, along the way is tough challenges, barriers, things that get in our way. So far, what sort of challenges have you met that you found tough, and how did you go about managing those?
I think one of the challenges is probably your own insecurity, that you're most definitely your like worst critic, and can't see your own accomplishment, and that you might question what you're doing right now, if it's right, if it's what you want to do. So I guess struggling with yourself, and ways of overcoming that is being in exchange with other people, because then you realize that everyone has those moments, and that they, just because you're thinking it is not the case. And for example, also with the activism, it's not always you fight for something, you do a demonstration, you do a panel, and something changes. It might just stay the same, or things might deteriorate, like political situation, but that doesn't mean that you should give up or be super frustrated, because it's a continuous progress, and it's not as simple to be an activist or to advocate, for example, for gender equity. It's a process that has like its back and forth.
Yeah, so you have to deal with that and work your way through what's not working. So when things don't go well, or when you're having a particularly tough time for whatever reason, personally or in your study or in family, what or whom do you rely on or go to I guess, recover from those setbacks, or to boost your confidence or your resilience?
It's for sure my mother. And I'm glad also to have a person in my life who I can always go back to. I can call her, I can visit her. and tell her about my feelings, and she will reassure me or remind me of my capabilities, but also give recommendations how I can improve, because it's not simply just supporting, but feel like the best supporters are the ones who can also give you advice or tell you how you can improve. So it's for sure my mother who will remind me that I can do more than I maybe think of myself I can do.
Okay, so you think that that reinforces for you that you can do more, or you can recover and get through it all.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're not studying and when you're not working in the community groups and with Zonta and with the diaspora, what do you do? When you have that spare time or some time to yourself, or what do you do? Because most leaders have things that they go to and they do just to relax or to have fun. So what do you do?
For me, it's spending time with friends and family outside of these matters of activism or school. So just thinking of a plan or just sitting together and enjoying a movie. Otherwise, I like to go on walks and listen to music and just be in the moment and enjoy my surroundings. And sometimes I like to read a book if I have something that's really like grasping my interest. So that's like my go-to activities.
Wow. So you've been in Nairobi for a little while. You haven't been there for very long, have you?
No, since mid-July.
Okay. So what are you discovering about living in Nairobi, which is very different to Germany, and I think maybe similar or different to Western Sahara? What are you discovering and what are you learning? And I guess what are the high points and what are the low points about being in Nairobi?
I firstly learned that I can adapt to wherever I am. Maybe it's also because I have a nomad background. So Sahrawi people were nomads, so they always moved around and settled again. And probably also, if you're part of the diaspora, you never feel completely at home, for example, in Germany, even though you grew up there, but also don't feel home in Western Sahara. So I've been able to find home in every place I go, and it's in Nairobi as well. And what I really like here is that the people are super friendly and open and come up to you, and that has helped me in the process. So I haven't been really struggling. I guess the biggest point would be just missing the family and being this far away that you can't just take a quick trip back home.
So I imagine you're using a lot of Zoom and FaceTime and Messenger and all the other ways, or WhatsApp, all the other ways that you communicate with your siblings and with your mother.
Exactly, yeah. Thankfully, you have all these opportunities.
Well, there's lots of ways in which we can communicate these days, aren't there? And it helps us connect and to stay. I noticed since I've been talking with you tonight, the phone's just rung and it's my partner touching base with me, and I think he's forgotten I was doing this at this point. So yes, there's many, many different ways in which we can connect and work together. And your Zonta Club's a prime example of that, because everything you're doing is online. You're staying in touch and making plans for the way in which your club wishes to take forward the work on behalf of Zonta. So when you look into the future, Emma, maybe the near future, the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see that might look like for you?
So hopefully I'm finishing my bachelor's next year. So I have my first diploma, and then I'm hoping to just take a gap year to explore career options, to internship, maybe also improve on language skills as assets. And also I'd like to spend some time more in the refugee camps, because I've always been able only to stay for 2 weeks during this autumn break or Easter break. So I'm hoping to explore more of that, what hasn't been possible in the limits of having a semester in uni. And then I'd like to continue studying with a master's, and where it goes or what it could be is quite open still. But I like it that it's not very classic, and that I can redefine myself along the way.
So your bio talks about maybe there's a future for you in academia or a future in politics. And so you don't have a strong choice either way. Are you just seeing what happens as you work your way through study?
I can imagine like connecting the two, because I've been talking to professors who, for example, especially with international law, are advising governments or advising governments in exile on issues of international law and how they can support this their position. And I think we might maybe underestimate how much potential academia has for activism and politics and to make a change. And I hope to find also a connection and venue for myself too.
So are you in Nairobi just until the end of this year and then you'll return to Germany to finish your study?
Exactly. I'll be back, I finish in November and then my studies continue again in February. So I have a somewhat of a semester break in between.
Wow. So as we start to move the conversation to a close, Emma, there'll be a lot of people that come and listen and watch our conversation today. What are some thoughts you'd like to leave with anyone who chooses to watch us and be our audience? What are some really important, powerful thoughts you'd like to leave?
I think the audience that you probably have are all active women who are advancing and advocating for gender equity. So I'd say just that we keep on going and that we push other people we have around us, especially women, to also be part of our collective effort in contributing to change.
What advice would you give to us about working with women such as yourself? What I know you spoke about it earlier, but a closing thought about what's the key thing that will keep you in Zonta and attract some of your friends into Zonta?
I think if Zonta is able or finds ways to facilitate liberation movements that are not necessarily completely or clearly part of gender equity, but see the connection with other struggles, for example, the Sahrawi people and their self-determination right, because it means that it can change the venue for all women of Western Sahara, and as well as for other people that are facing oppression and also with like social issues, migrant background, that we find ways that we can connect these issues with gender equity because they are so intertwined.
I know in my club here in Toowoomba, in Queensland, in Australia, we have a very large refugee community in our city, and our club is working with many of those women to find the ways that they need us to support them, not the ways we think they need support, it's what they need from us, and to attract them to be part of our work on their behalf as well as being part of Zonta. Well, Emma, it's been lovely getting to know you. It's been lovely talking with you today. So thank you so much for your time and your generosity in being part of this. I know you spoke at convention recently in Hamburg and you're really quite active in the Zonta world. So I wish you well in your studies. I wish you well in the rest of your semester in Nairobi and when you return to Germany. And I know we'll hear a lot more of you in the future, both in Zonta and I think more broadly across the world. And I wish you well with your work on behalf of your people, the Sahrawi people, and the work in the diaspora. So again, thank you, and
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.